every day we live in a world where there's a slaughterhouse that kills the ones that are defenseless and unable to fight back. These are the animals that end up on our plate and that we constantly refuse to see the sufferings of. We think this is actually horrendous, and we have to stop the production and the consumption of meat. 2 points of setup before I move on to my arguments. Firstly, what we will do as the state is we will give companies time to change from animal farming businesses to other businesses. We are happy to also subsidize plant alternatives or GMO alternatives to the meat that we usually consume. We think it's going to be affordable this way because there are subsidies and because in general it costs way less actually to grow plants. The only reason that some vegan diets are more expensive in the status quo is just because there is not much demand for it. We think with this major change, it's going to be actually way more affordable than food that we consume in the status quo. Secondly, after the time span that we give chances for companies to actually switch to other alternatives, we are going to find people who keep on producing meat and consuming meat as well. And we think over time a norm will form so that everyone actually doesn't have a habit of consuming meat, so that most people actually switch to completely plant-based diets. 2 arguments then. Firstly, why eating meat is immoral. Secondly, the effects on areas such as environment, health, and culture. So first argument, why eating meat is immoral. And this is the main argument coming from government side of the house. The first reason it's immoral is because you must kill animals in order to obtain their meat. There is no other way to obtain their meat other than entirely ending their life before they even had a choice to do so, before they could even actually live a normal life as an animal, because their only and sole purpose was to be consumed. So you dictate what someone's life purpose is for, and you end it without their choice, without their ability to consent. We think this is immoral. Secondly, this is doubly immoral when humans are beings that have conscience. We think that humans should not hurt other people because it inflicts pain. The same should apply to animals, right? Because animals are also beings that feel pain, insofar as this is needless suffering that we are purposely adding just for the sake of our convenience and just for the sake of our satisfaction. We think this is actually something that is immoral. We think there should be no distinction between hurting humans needlessly and hurting animals needlessly. Both should be acts that are condemned, especially because humans are different from the lions that actually have to eat meat and don't have conscience, right? Because humans actually have the conscience and they can know that pain is something that is bad and they can actually prevent it. We have to prevent it. The third reason that it is immoral is because of existence of alternatives. Because we can actually switch to plant-based diets and still supply most of our nutritional needs. Therefore, there is actually no need for us to consume meat and to actually get our nutrition in this way. I want to preempt some things coming from the opposition side. Why is it impossible to regulate or to consume meat in a reasonable way in the status quo? It is because companies actually have the active incentive to save time and money, and they have therefore the incentive to access things like loopholes as well. We think this is why in most parts of the world there are inhumane killing processes as well, which makes all of the moral harms previously way worse. Companies do this because it's cheaper, it's faster, it's more convenient. Therefore, this shows that regulation cannot work in order to solve this torture. Even if opposition proves in some way that they can regulate it, we think that it's going to be very, very difficult to maintain those regulations. The reason is because companies are going to lobby this again and again. And the number one most difficult thing to overcome is that there is a unique characteristic of meat and our desire to consume it. Because unlike other things that we desire that are usually harmful, like alcohol or smoking, meat is not something that is harmful. Therefore, there are many ways for companies to keep on promoting the benefits, and there are many ways to just wash your hands clean and just not look at the suffering that these animals actually endure, but just enjoy the delicious meal on your plate. That's why you are tempted to eat it 3 times every day. And this is why it's the hardest thing to regulate, and that's why we have to put an entirely bold stance against this. That's why we have proven that eating meat is immoral, and this is the only way for us to stop our meat consumption. Second argument then, what are the impacts to areas like environment, health, and culture? So the first thing I want to talk about actually is health. What will happen to nutrition? We want to concede that there might be some difficulties for us to access certain vitamins and minerals that are previously easy to get from meat. But let's be comparative, because what happens on opposition is not that people are going to have balanced consumption of these vitamins and minerals when we allow the consumption of meat, but it is usually the overconsumption of meat, right? Because it's delicious, because it's easily flavored, easily marketed by companies. As you can see in the status quo, what this causes is not actually diets that are fully balanced and fully healthy, but it is more things like obesity, things like cancer, things like diseases where you have excess cholesterol and whatnot. That's why the overconsumption of meat is what is likely to happen on their side. So if they want to run a case about nutrition, that cannot work because of the way that peoples inherently will behave. So on our side, it's going to be better when there's no meat at all, because nobody can exploit that primal craving for meat, and therefore there's going to be way less of these diseases, and our nutrition as a whole is going to be more balanced because plant-based diets are more healthy. The second thing that I want to discuss here is what happens to environment. We think that meat is also very harmful for the environment, and there are going to be these extra benefits that come down if we actually make this proposal. So meat is very harmful because in order for you to farm cattle, you need to take up space for farmland. You need to take up so many resources to even grow these cattle as well, and that produces carbon, and the entire process pollutes the air. And that's why meat is like the one of the biggest producers of greenhouse gases, and that's why reducing meat is the #1 way actually to reduce environmental harms for individuals. So that is why we are going to also reduce a lot of environmental damages for the things that we primarily very, very often consume. And we think this is going to accelerate processes like reducing your carbon productions, your carbon emissions, while we also do things like shifting to renewable energy. We think changing our diet is also going to be something that ensures that we have a sustainable lifestyle. Lastly, what happens to religious and cultural traditions? We think that traditions are social constructs that can adapt according to how society actually behaves. That's why there are different streams of like Buddhism, for example. Some of them allow veganism. Some of them allow people to eat fish, for example. Even if we violate people's rights somewhat, it's still okay because meat is usually used for ceremonies or offerings, right? And there are other ways to express your gratitude toward other people or toward your God, and you can spend your money for other things. Therefore, there's an alternative, and because primarily religions teach you to not inflict pain, you should reduce this kind of pain that you're inflicting towards animals. And for all of those reasons, we are proud to propose.